Thursday, September 10th, 2020. Once again, I'll open the privilege of the floor. We received our minutes from the last meeting. Is there any additions and or corrections?
Accept as presented.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Treasurer's report.
Surprisingly, page 94 of our packet. To make Paul's point.
So, Peggy, kudos to you and Joy for the work you've done putting all this.
And now, I will confess, I'm working off maybe grab 0 of the packet. I hope it's 94 of everyone's current packages. I think it is. So anyway, it's our normal income statement. For our revenue side, again, linear, about $79,000 a month would be break even. We're just under $70,000 a month. We do have a potential for closing some of the projects that have been prior resolved between now and the end of the year. I don't know what level of 0 to 100 that'll happen. 0. Okay, so with that being said, we're probably, we'll probably end about 185 to 200,000 below projected revenue that was budgeted. Well, it won't be 200,000 because we're already there, so about 185. Sorry. The operational expense side, we talked about why at length, and that's really the big kicker on the operational expense side. Break even is 83,000-ish a month. We're spending about 106,000 a month. The majority of that was bad debt and why. I mean, everything else is either below or at budget. I mean, there's just, it's a unique thing that will not reoccur in the future. And it's an investment towards the businesses that unfortunately we had to write off, and what do you call it? The jewel? No, Jay's the jewel. Whatever you call the Y. We don't want to take Jay's moniker away from him. So having said that, when you take revenue over operational expense, it's probably going to be somewhere between a 450 and a 350 loss. Now, we already saw an 185 gain in the LDC, so that'll lessen the blow to the agency as a whole, but we're probably going to be about 300K below. But these are challenging and shifting times, and we've met the challenge, and unfortunately it's a small investment. Page 96 of your packet, balance sheet. Quick assets are up about 31,000 from prior month. Receivables are down 182,000 from prior month. Total current assets are down 136,000 from prior month. Total assets are down 143 from prior month, 143,000, not dollars. And total current liabilities are down about 79,000 from prior month. On page 97 of your packet, total capital is down about 64,000 from prior month. On page 98, it's just a snapshot of the extraordinary expenses just on 146 Arsenal, so you can see where we've exceeded our budgeted amounts for a variety of reasons, but a lot of it is soft cost of building depreciation and things of that nature. I mean, I always like to call them not real money, but Niall would disagree. They're non-cash transactions, but they're necessary accounting reasons. So some of it is a little less than what it was in real currency. And that is, then we can move to page 101 of your packet. 101, 102, and 104, they just show snapshots of the major loans, again highlighting benchmark did pay off. I think it was last month, right? Yeah, last month. So that was a nice boost to the cash reserves. And through 106, and that would be the complete, we didn't show snapshots of all the loans, they're all current. And there's nothing new that's not on here, Lyle, with regards to troubled accounts or anything of that nature?
No, nothing's changed, right?
Very good. So that's the treasurer's report. I would move to make a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Benchmark didn't pay out, they just got current, right?
No, they got their complete balance off. It was like 101,000 or 80 or something.
160.
It was a fair amount, it's kind of what LCO Destiny's planning on doing, they got a chunk of money and they're gonna pay it off and write off debt, the old fashioned way.
And we have potentially another one out there too.
Hey, we'll take all the money that's offered.
And, you know, by the way, the board should be really commended on the benchmark activity. I don't know if you remember what we went through some years back trying to save that asset for the community, and 70 or 80 jobs involved, and the services that were provided to the community, and it would not have happened were it not for the work of this board. So, you know,
I commend the owner. You talk about a risky business. I remember going through that, and it's like, kudos to her. You know, I never thought really
Peg is one
that
of the,
for outside forces coming to bear on her, what she has no control over. I would have rated that as a high probability for right now.
Peg is one of the toughest ladies I know, and still remains so. She is, boy, she's a gutsy lady. Unbelievable.
Good for her. On the treasurer's report, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. No committees, unfinished business, city center, we've already covered 146 Arsenal, so city center industrial park, rail project.
Dave, you wanna touch on that?
Sure, just, I'll let Joe handle more of the, right now I was just kinda waiting for some of the agreements to get closed, but, I talked to the contractor, as soon as we, close on the city property, which will probably happen before the swap with Renzi's, we can get the contractor in there, at least he can start mobilizing, start some of the initial work on getting that railroad, moved and clearing some of the property for moving the railroad back to the new location.
Yeah, there were some additional, lots that Renzi's requested that the city convey, and the subdivision approval was just completed on those last week in the map file. I've got those legal descriptions now, so I can add those to the deed from the city to Renzi's. I've got those deeds prepared. I need to get them to Bob Sly's office, which I will either do this afternoon or tomorrow, and request that he get those executed. Part of that property from the city is coming to the IDA for a portion of where the rail's gonna be relocated. And once we get title to that, we can get the contractor in on that portion. And I'll have to still work through Renzi's council on the parcel that's coming, that we're swapping with them.
And the releases.
Yeah, because they've got a very complicated financing system in place, and their lenders have to release what we're getting, and they want to, include the additional properties they're getting in their security. So that's a little bit complex, but, I'll work through with that with their attorneys.
Dave, once the legal matters concluded, is it a long project?
It's probably a couple, 2-3 weeks. for them to
I mean, it's
work
not
on.
something that's.
We're planning 5-6 weeks. It'll take him a couple weeks to actually do the actual work, but then he's gotta get CSX in there to actually inspect it and say that it meets.
There's a pretty significant portion of it in what we're getting from the city, so as soon as we can get that deal closed, he can get started.
But, once one part is completed, we'll call it phase one, can the whole project be used until the whole project, or phase two are completed?
Now, we gotta get the whole rail spur, part of where the rail spur is gonna be relocated is on what Renzi has to convey to us.
So the benefit that's trying to be achieved isn't done until both parts are done.
Right, yeah.
I should
Now,
have
for
said
the
it
city,
that way.
the city, cause if the rail comes down like this and then, we're gonna cut in sooner. So the city land is here, so the city land is gonna meet to the main rail course, we start to work progressing towards that last segment where the new siding's gonna be is where we.
So I just lost track of
Yeah.
exactly what we're trying to do, this has been discussed for a while.
At the risk of playing historian this morning, I don't mean to be that way, but again, kudos to the board, because years ago, this board made a special effort to develop that rail siding on behalf of 3 local paper companies. And the notion then was to put some special warehousing in place, and unfortunately, one of the companies failed during the long process. It took this agency to go after that money, grants and so on, with its own resources and make that happen. And it took several years for us to see the advantage come to the community by having the work done by this board years ago. But we're now seeing that, and this is going to be another very exciting prospect down in the city center. It's gonna be great.
You know, while we're talking business parks, just like, I can't remember if I told you all or not, we did get an extension on the Northern Border grant of $500,000 for the business complex at Watertown International. So that would have run out this month. We got that extended to September 2022 to give us more time to get someone in there. And then, we've got a request pending for an extension with the ESD grant, the state grant that we have, that's for $1 million, so.
Nice. Moving right along. Counselor, you wanna walk us through these resolutions or how do we do this?
You wanna take it down, since these are ones prepared by your special counsel?
Oh, that's right.
Conflict?
Yep.
Just for background, Joe, in his very skillful way, determined that there may be an appearance of conflict of interest in the development of these projects, and so offered to step aside, which we agreed to do, and we've hired Schwartz Moses, a company out of Skaneateles, to represent the IDA on these upcoming projects. Joe's partner is Kevin McAuliffe of Barclay Damon. Kevin is representing these, and that's why Joe stepped aside. So in any event, what you have in this morning, you have these resolutions which are basically designed to enable IDA staff, after consulting with Energy Committee and others, to move forward to take it to the next steps, which would include things like public hearings and those things. So these are pretty standard fare. I don't know, you know, that we've looked obviously very carefully at the environmental matters. Rob has been very concerned, justly so. Yeah, well, making sure we're covering our bases. And Bill and Paul have, you know, been looking at these things as well. So this is just another logical step in what I consider to be the progression, which will enable us to move forward with public hearings and so on.
Okay.
Can I make a more general question, Dave?
Sure.
I know we're gonna start meeting in person. Are we gonna, you said we'll kind of get back to our normal flow of using energy and loan review, kind of to bounce off of each other and run some of these through in the, what we'll call the more normal fashion?
Don't remember that.
If you wanna say it that way.
My goal is to get back to normal.
Okay. I only say that because, I mean, I know and I say it with tongue in cheek, I'm a pain in the butt about asking for details, but I like to come to a board meeting.
You're a pain in the butt.
Well, no, I like to come to a meeting prepared for my
Tell him,
free
Lisa.
position.
No, I like that guy.
Tell him.
I feel this.
But the thing is like, I asked for the application, and we've had them since March. I mean, it would be nice when we get them, if they just get shoved out to the whole board, and we can use them as bookends if you want to, but like, I do like to prepare, I hate to say it,
You tell me what you wanna do.
DNA.
I mean, you tell me and I'll do it. The idea originally, I think, in these cases was to kind of filter it through Bill and his group, rather than send you thousands of pieces of paper, which then people say to me, what the hell are you sending me this stuff for?
But it's kinda like the Marshall thing, what we talked about earlier.
Right,
If you have a site that says the applications are now loaded there, you can go look at them if you want to. I'll assure you.
That makes
I will.
sense. That makes sense.
Because getting these things on a Friday before a holiday and then luckily having to, you know, go print them and pour through them, I mean, it's not really how I wanted to spend my holiday, but I did it, and, you know, I got a few questions, but none of them were substantial.
We get it.
It was more of that, Dave, it's just,
I agree.
it's
This-
not the best way, since we had that audit that said
You know-
it felt our board wasn't as engaged. I know that's not the truth, but let's not promote
Unfortunately-
that fallacy.
Unfortunately, we got, a lot of this came in, and then COVID hit, and then we went to Zoom, and
My general complaint, not a big one, but that was it, sorry. But I am a pain in the butt, I'll agree, you can ask my mother.
Will the minutes reflect that?
You can even call my mother, I'll give you her number, she'll confirm it.
I like meeting in person, because when you you can see the body language and you can see somebody go,
Yeah.
but, okay.
Yeah.
I'm for every single thing in front of us, I just have a general complaint about not being
no.
prepared.
Your point is well
I
taken.
hate going to meetings.
Well,
not
It's been
prepared.
tough.
Part of the reason why it's well taken is I said earlier, Rob called me last night and pointed out something in these resolutions that having read so many of the damn things, I didn't even catch. And I don't know if you wanna bring it
Yeah,
up.
when we get to it, sure, but that was one of the questions. I was
Having
gonna ask.
more eyes on a document, finding something that I think probably is a boilerplate issue more than, anything else, is something we have to address today, and it also brings up, it may be meaningless, but it also will bring up what we did with next stamp, because the same issue, it exists in the next stamp inducement resolutions and preliminary agreements, but it didn't exist in the OIDA resolution. So, that's the type of thing that I think having more eyes.
Maybe which council prepared the documents
Well,
versus
and-
another.
It might be, because I gave them my boilerplate, OIA resolutions to use, and something might have gotten changed.
Just to,
I think
more
that's exactly what
specifically,
happened, Joe, but if it's something that has substantial meaning, it's nice we can pick it up and ask
Yeah,
for
let's
it.
take a
Why
look
don't we
at
get
it.
started through these, and then when we get there, then we can have that.
certainly not in the first document.
So I have resolution 0910, 2020.01, it's a resolution determines the action towards acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of a certain commercial project for ASA Clayton, New York Solar One LLC. The company will not have a significant effect on the environment. Can I have a motion and a second on this resolution for further discussion?
I'll move it.
Second. And, I guess what Paul was just alluding to in the boilerplate, it's mostly on page 2 of each of the documents, it's the boilerplate where it talks about real property and sales and use tax exemptions, and I wasn't in all of the.
Those are in the inducement resolution.
Well, it's actually in the environmental resolution as well, it's a standard, and I didn't read it until just now, I saw it in the other ones. Because I personally have been going to these energy committee meetings and been trying to leave room for not having 7 of us on the board, and I understand that when we all come in, it sort of becomes a board meeting, and I have respected that, but. So that's one
What
thing.
to do about that?
But, no, and there's nothing to do about it, I mean, frankly, there isn't,
I think what happened, guys, OIA did not apply for sales and use tax exemption, so it was not in their resolution. These other applicants did apply for them, whether you grant them or not is another story.
Okay.
But they did apply for them, and that's why the attorneys included them in the resolution.
alright. So then, now we can deal with it in
So-
the other one.
My question would be, if we leave the sales tax in in all 3 of these resolutions for each 3 of these, it comes down to the final pilot document agreement to establish that they would be exempt from those, or does?
It comes down to the final approving resolution. What's being said here is that they've applied for these exemptions, and they have applied for the exemptions. So having it in these resolutions doesn't bind you.
So we have the right to provide it, but not the requirement.
Right.
Well, there's an aspect here too. I spent hour and a half on the phone with the attorneys yesterday afternoon trying to understand the best method to comply with the county's request not to abate local sales tax. And their recommendation, their strong recommendation, and I think maybe Chairman Dave heard part of this, was that we follow through, including an application that says they want sales tax abatement. That enables them to get sales tax abatement on the state level, that 4%, plus the 4% on the local level. However, once that occurs, then we have to develop an agreement which allows the IDA to collect that 4% and then turn it back to the county as a repayment of that 4%. So there's a step in here that we have not experienced before, because the county's never, in the other past agreements we've done, they've not requested that we not abate local sales tax.
So we're doing a payment in lieu of sales tax is what we're talking
In
about.
effect,
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Right. But for the purposes of these resolutions, they're actually accurate. because
They're just generic.
They have applied for sales and use tax
In
exemption.
the applications, only one of them applied for.
That, right, originally, Bill's instructions by the committee to me was, we develop a process with Oya and we stick to that process. Oya did not request sales tax abatement, you may remember. And so this initial agreement we're looking at, this first one, was done as an approach to the IDA prior to the current developers, okay? We had this discussion with original developers for this project many months ago, before the county had made the request not to abate TAP. So,
That's clear for me.
okay, are you?
No, I just, it was more of a general question, again, to see these.
And to Don's
only
point,
a couple days.
between the inducement resolution, which actually gives, you know, the agency the ability to work with these guys to finalize the pilot, between that and your final approving resolution is where Don will work with, the other attorneys to develop whatever formula is gonna be developed, that will be included in the final authorizing resolution.
So in succinctly, what's here is what's been applied for. What the final approval is,
What you decide.
what all of the taxing jurisdictions have agreed to, and what we then resolve
What
to
you
allow.
decide, right.
Okay.
This, as we say, this is the interim step that gives us, the point to work forward. And by the way, the attorneys for these developers are aware of what we just described and how this vehicle to get the sales tax back to the county. And it appears as though they are fully in agreement with doing it. So it's a matter of codifying this whole mess when we get it all screwed. And it's been an interesting couple of weeks trying to sort through this mess.
So this is a new criteria actually we're bringing out via the county's wishes, which will probably be used for every one coming down the pipe.
The worry I
Where it's
have,
requested.
and I've expressed this to Bill, the worry I have is that as our ability to abate taxes decreases, and this is a decrease of that abatement opportunity, my perception is the IDA has less opportunity for developing its community because we can't use the tools that we typically have in place, or at least those tools are modified. What I don't want us to do is become a situation where we can't abate enough to make it a reasonable approach to the IDA to abate to begin with. You know, a developer on these small projects particularly are gonna say, wait, how much am I gonna save by going to the IDA for their help? Well, the answer is, they're gonna save less money now because we're not abating local sales tax. So the question is, when you factor in time, which is the real killer, and legal fees and all the other things that they must go through in order to affect an IDA pilot, then the question is it worth it?
But in some of these projects, Don, we're only talking about $15,000.
Well, this is the point. The point exactly
You can
right.
argue both sides of it.
You know,
can
the
say
same-
for $15K, the project shouldn't be sunk.
The sales tax environment is real sensitive right now. This
It's-
whole environment may change in the future if we get back to normal with the local municipalities and the county under sales tax. But right now, that's where the sensitivity lies.
And I
Well,
think
the
it's different on
sensitivity
brownfield
also
sites
is-
versus greenfield
Yeah.
sites.
They are creating long-term jobs.
Right, that's another.
That's another one.
Whole
I mean,
interest, I
and
mean,
as I said to Rob yesterday when we talked about this, I would hope, Bill, that if we got a project out in DeFerrier, that there'd be nothing that the county wouldn't be willing to put on the table to get that site cleaned up and site run.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I think you're looking at two different scenarios here. You're looking at a project that's taking clean land and putting a project on. And if we were doing one in the city of Watertown on a landfill or out at DeFerrier through the new program for environmentally challenged properties, I think anything should be on the table. And I think we would find more receptive response from the elected officials to grant more to get those type of properties cleaned up and something put on them.
We looked at creative ways, Paul, and I know you know this as Bill does. One of those would be to abate the sales tax initially, but include the local piece of the sales tax in the pilot document, so that that can be amortized and paid back to the county over the term of the pilot. So we wouldn't lose our development creative environment of abating, and yet the county could also save, because of the optics involved, we're not giving up sales tax. So, I don't know, and I think that's the subject we ought to talk about.
For the elected guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah, Dave.
No, that's fine, cause it carries through everything we're doing.
Yeah, that was more of a
Yeah.
general discussion.
It carries through
Thank
everything
you.
we're doing here, so,
But I think it does beg the issue of how that needs, every county legislator ought to have a good working knowledge
And they don't.
of that in order to make that effective and really be used as a good tool down the road. And that's what scares me about this process. You got 3 or 4 that truly see the pros and cons of it. Everyone else is, it's just sales tax, just sales tax. We gotta have more sales tax, and without it, no, we aren't voting for it.
And that
Shoot themselves in the foot.
Sad.
From what I've heard, I think we're doing pretty good to get them to even consider, there's enough of them that hate pilots to begin with, any concept. Forget about sales tax on general municipal taxes. You know, we already know that when we get to a large project, it's gonna be tough to get a pilot agreement negotiated. So I think we've done pretty good with these community solars to get the taxing jurisdictions on board. And that's a lot to do with how Bill has sold them to the elected officials, so. But, you know, the pilots are not a good subject on just about any issue, so. So can I ask, since these exist in all 3 projects, we've discussed it once and it's not gonna be an issue. I have talked to Don once before, and I don't know that it arrives now or in the project documents that come later on, about seeking some reports, and it goes back to something that was in the audit about us following through. I think it'd be nice to see like a payroll report by zip code to see, since these projects are only generating really construction jobs, where are those people that are working on these projects? Are they in the Tri-County or 4-county region? Or are they bringing in crews from outside the area?
You can include those requirements in the project agreement if you instruct your attorneys to do that.
That's typically where they're found.
It's in the project agreement that get put together as part of the closing package.
Okay.
That's where all those requirements
So
should be.
that would be a discussion that could be had later
Right.
on as we move forward. Okay.
okay, on resolution, and where'd we go? Our environmental resolution. Any further discussion on this resolution?
No, nor in general.
Roll call vote,
Dave,
yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Resolution carries. I have resolution 0910-2020.02. It's a resolution taking preliminary official action toward the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipment of a certain commercial project for ASA Clayton, New York Solar One LLC, the company, and authorizing the execution and delivery of preliminary agreement with the company with respect to such transaction. Motion and a second, please.
Move to accept.
Second.
Discussion on this resolution?
Already been had.
Roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Preliminary agreement. This preliminary agreement made as of September 10th, 2020 between Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency, the agency, and a public benefit corporation organized and existing under the laws of the state of New York, and ASA Clayton, New York Solar One LLC, the company, a limited liability company organized and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware. And I have a motion and a second on this preliminary agreement.
I'll move it.
Second.
It doesn't call for it, but I think we're gonna do a roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Resolution, motion carries, thank you. We skip to page 182. I have resolution 0910-2020.03. It's a resolution determining the action towards the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipment of a certain commercial project for GSPP 24658 County Route 47 North LLC. The company will not have a significant effect on the environment. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Resolution carries. Thank you. Resolution 0910-2020.04. It's a resolution taking preliminary official action towards the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of a certain commercial project for GSPP 24658 County Route 47 North LLC, the company, and authorizing the execution and delivery of a preliminary agreement with the company with respect to such transaction. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Resolution carries. We have a preliminary agreement. This preliminary agreement made as of September 10th, 2020 between Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency, the agency, a public benefit corporation organized and existing under the laws of the state of New York, and GSPP 24658 County Route 47 North LLC, the company, a limited liability company organized and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware. Can I have a motion for this and a second on this agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Agreement is passed, motion carries, thank you. Page 229. Resolution 0910-2020.05, a resolution determining the action towards the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipment of a certain commercial project for GSPP 24658 County Route 47 South LLC. The company will not have a significant effect on the environment. I have a motion and a second on this resolution.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote.
Dave,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Resolution carries. Thank you. Resolution 0910-2020.06. It's a resolution taking preliminary official action toward the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipment of a certain commercial project for GSPP 24658 County Route 47 South LLC, the company, and authorizing the execution and delivery of a preliminary agreement with the company with respect to such transaction. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
Yes. I'll move it.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Resolution carries. In the preliminary agreement, this preliminary agreement made as of September 10th, 2020 between Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency, the agency, a public benefit corporation organized and existing under the laws of the state of New York, and GSPP 24658 County Route 47 South LLC, the company, limited liability company organized and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware. I have a motion and a second.
I'll move it.
Second.
Roll call, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Nice. Any other discussion at this point, or anything else for the IDA?
Just one other kind of highlight, similar to what Paul brought up, and we can have a greater discussion, but just a point. When I was going through the packets, the ASA Clayton one was actually rather confusing to me. It looked like they were taking 206 acres of cropland out, but then when you really dig through it, you find out it's like 20 acres, which actually makes greater sense. But at some point, because croplands are tied to farmlands, which are extremely important, and we've already discussed in general, it would be good for us to kind of create that as an immediate cost of benefit, and then understanding that it is only taking 6 acres and not 200 acres, because frankly, it was extremely confusing.
When I did the cost benefit analysis, I did that.
Okay, but I mean, just the documents, the seeker had all sorts of erroneous data in there, the numbers didn't add up, and it was very confusing to me personally, knowing like, there's no way this project is more than 20 acres, just the size of it.
It's part of the tax parcel, that's why.
Yeah.
The tax parcel itself is that big, and this is part of the tax parcel.
Yeah, and it was just very confusing on what the size of the project was. It said 200 acres is the size of the project, but the parcel was like 300 something, so I'm like, there's no way, they must have moved the decimal point. It was only a greater comment of, we're very sensitive to how much cropland, and again, it's hay, it's grass, it's low value cropland, but it's still feed, and we've just taken 60 acres out of circulation, so it's not gonna be farmed anymore. Whether that's important to the overall scheme of Jefferson County, probably not, it's very de minimis, I get it, but if we now approved our 100th project, now we've taken 2,500 acres out of circulation, and I think I would say that's a fair amount of feed. That might be a big deal. Just a general comment.
I agree, and then, you know, that's where we get back to doing our normal. If we can get back where we can get there and we can start looking at maps sitting in front of us, you know, during our committee meetings and everything. And I totally agree with you, this has been trying times.
Drips and drabs.
Yeah, it's been trying times on all of us.
If you look at the documents that were submitted to us by Nexam, which included a lot more than what we got with these 3 projects, it had a complete layout, it had a consultant's recommendation and study and all that stuff. This company did not go to that extent with their submissions. There wasn't even if you tried to see the site plan that was included in the seeker document, you couldn't make it up. I only knew how to answer it because my brother lived next door to Wetterham for years. I was interested, believe it or not, real close to there, my brother sold a piece that has Indian burial grounds on it there, and there's even a section in the secret talking about the Indian burial grounds.
Sounds like the airport. We, one of the things you'll see, every one of these projects differs. I mean, there are similarities, of course, but there are also quite different calculations. A lot of these developers on these very small projects simply say, look, how much do I invest in making and deploying this project? Do I go through one of these consulting firms for the full-blown environmentals, which you've seen, or we do something less? And that's what you have to deal with as an agency. We're gonna see that, so.
And that's really for the locality to determine
Correct.
seeker and everything, and that's why home rule is so important in New York State. But at the end of the day, I'm just making a broader context
No,
of,
that's true.
we're trying to help and subsidize to our greatest extent one industry, and we don't want to imperil it by trying to create a secondary industry, and then, you know, National Grid is still the distributor of energy around here, and if you do get to the 100th project, what the hell does it do to a public utility? And that's a greater discussion that is not meant for this room, it's meant for, you know, our room discussion.
The one thing that-
It's really,
I'm sorry.
no, that's it.
The one thing that'd be nice to get with all our applications would be a copy of the local approval resolutions, like the planning board approvals. So, most of the towns you can find it on, and that's how I got the answer for Rob. I went back and actually read the planning board minutes to find out. It's like.
I asked all my real property questions to an expert.
So, that'd be one thing to request in future applications.
You could require that they submit that.
When, we did get it on the Nexamp projects, the approvals.
One quick comment I'll throw out back to land use planning in regards to agriculture, particularly when it comes to solar projects, maybe potentially eating them up. Observation I share is hundreds of acres of cropland in this county is now falling into what I call as a reserve. If weather climatic conditions around the country change, then it comes out of reserve here for cropland. It gets used that year only because of weather conditions affecting something price or bad conditions somewhere else. There's hundreds of acres that is literally, it's going back to shrubland and trees right now, which you didn't see that 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. Well, I think it's easily demonstrated that this agency probably has a greater concern for the impact on agriculture than virtually any other organization. You know, I mean, here's a guy at the end of the table. If we were stealing good cropland at an alarming rate, guess who would be standing up beating his chest?
Yeah.
But the point is that in some cases, we're actually saving some of these farms because for them, they've been going through some tough times, and this at least provides some kind of a steady income. So they're making a determination as to what the value of their farm is and how that is best deployed. And now new technology is such that apparently we can develop systems where solar can work with agriculture. You're not excluding one or the other. And so maybe we need to start exploring those kinds of options as well.
I know at one point, I think Jay, you were heading the charge with a bunch of agencies that are alphabet soup of trying to actually locate where the best uses of developments would be, so we don't actually take out of circulation what we'll call the better croplands or the more productive crop, whatever, whatever the right terminology is, and I don't know how far that got along, it was done to a degree.
Yeah. We actually did end up producing a document. I don't know that it hit the mark the way we had hoped it would hit, but we did produce a document that talked about the important agricultural lands and the impacts of solar power development on those. The Ag and Farmland Protection Board at their last meeting had a discussion about this and was expressing concerns.
Sure.
So it's a conversation that we need to continue having.
Yeah, and my comment isn't exclusive to just renewable energy projects. It's taking out of circulation for any purpose.
Right.
I mean, so I don't want to make it sound like it's only for, it's just any type of development that this agency might or might not grant a benefit. It'd be understanding if we do imperil another industry.
Right.
In some way.
No, in the board's concern, very strong concern for that is appreciated. There's a balance between the two because in some cases these projects might actually help that farm grow and thrive. So how much do we give up to get?
I mean, you think about in the 50s and 60s when people discovered living along the lake was important, I'm sure we gave up lots of cropland to put up summer homes.
Exactly.
I mean, not that that's a bad thing because it created a great cash flow.
Right.
But I mean,
They had an impact on agriculture in a lot of different ways.
back then there was so much other cropland it didn't matter. There was enough stuff next to the lake.
No, it's something that the county as a whole, including our agency, needs to very carefully consider that there's a variety of different issues involved with all of this, and they all need to be factored in. Where is that balance? Where is that critical mass? So we're
The concern comes with that with new guidelines for reviewing the larger projects. That's out the window.
I will.
I mean, I think this new system is gonna be a disaster, I don't
The
see.
state, we're talking about the state.
The state's reviews, at least in Article 10, there was an option, the ability for local governments and even opposing groups to come in and make their concerns known, and basically, this is a, you know, the fast track to just doing it. I did see one thing written about one project by the Department of Agriculture that gave me hope that they were just gonna roll over and deliver the governor's agenda. But still, I mean, it takes anyone unless you're the local host community, you virtually have nothing. You gotta get their permission to challenge their decision.
At some point, I'd offer that at some point, if you as a board wanted to meet with the Commissioner of Agriculture to discuss those concerns, I'd be happy to set that up. Cause I know Commissioner Ball, when he was here last year, expressed very strong concerns about losing farmland to renewable energy projects. And I'm certain that if we sent a request, that he'd probably be happy to talk to you. Again, he works for the governor, but I know that he has a strong concern about that.
But part of our process,
I'd like to move on.
just a quick question for clarification. The Farmland Protection Board has looked at this and don't have complaints against it. That's part of our process, is it not?
Against these projects?
Yeah.
The ones we
Yeah, I
just-
thought all the solar projects that were going to be cited, Farmland Protection was going to take a look at them and rule if it was highly valuable
I don't
farmland.
think that was ever discussed on farmland.
It has not been on their agenda, and I was never given any kind of direction to bring anything to them.
Well, I thought we had said we were gonna look to them for their decision as to determining some of these more
What was-
valuable farmland projects.
What was discussed at Farmland Protection Board was that on these Article 10 projects, that they seek party status, which are the larger projects, and then decide whether or not, after reviewing the project, if they wanted to make comments in the approval process. That's what's my last recollection of what.
That's
happened.
right, it was the commercial project.
Commercial ones.
Yeah.
So,
Alright, thank you for that. Yep, got it.
Sorry, Dave, for bringing up a greater
No,
discussion.
and then, you know, once we get through our business here,
This is Christmas lunch.
it'd be great discussion at lunch and everything. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
you interrupted this discussion just to adjourn it.
All in favor, aye?
We have the board of JCIDA.
Okay. With that, I'll call to order the Jefferson County Civic Facility Development Corporation. It's our Thursday, September 10th. We received our minutes from our last meeting